Officer from MedUX, and he'll be sharing insights on meaningful quality, the new meaningful connectivity. Please welcome him. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. I'm really sorry because I have the hardest slot of the day, the hardest task to keep you awake at this time of the day. But I have good news. There is a cocktail just in front of here that will be offering you some drinks, some finger food. You are all invited. You are welcome. And the other good news, this is about to finish. So let's get to it. Let's keep to the slides. I hope I managed to get to the slides as my colleagues were struggling a little bit. So just a couple of sentences about MedUX. So we are a leading testing and monitoring company. We have a unique approach because we are a convergent provider measuring fixed and mobile broadband at the same time with different equipments and different approaches. And also we have a multi-platform QoE suite. So we measure quality of experience from different perspectives. And this is some of the topics that we would like to bring you today. We don't want to enter into brochures, commercial slides, etc. We mostly want to encourage the discussion, if this is possible yet at this time of the day. But at least we will leave some messages for the coming days for the SG12 work group, and hopefully will be taken into account also by all the stakeholders today in the room. We believe at MedUX that meaningful quality is like a natural step for meaningful connectivity, although it is implicit in the meaningful connectivity concept. We believe that we can go one step beyond. One step beyond, what we mean with that is basically we need to move from legacy quality of service measurements. We fully agree with some of our colleagues today and try to get as close as possible to the end user evaluation of the quality. So actually, the topic of today is evaluating connectivity status, but the title of the workshop is doing it from the end user perspective. So we do believe that by taking into consideration, oh, that's the last one, that wasn't supposed to be so. That was quick. I promise to keep it as executive as possible, but not that much. So let's keep the expectations right, okay? So we will start with the whys, why we are here. Probably many of you, you already know it. Then we will continue with the hows, how it could be measured, not with MedUX product, but in general, which are the approaches to measure mobile connectivity. And we would like to end up with a couple of international experiences. So the what's, what we did, how we did it, and which were the challenges, so that we exchange some experiences and hopefully we'll learn something today. What we want to discuss today is one step forward in meaningful connectivity. So what we actually want to achieve is societal development. We want to transform our societies. We want digital transformation of our countries. We actually want to bring new businesses and new industries to all, okay? That's the most important thing, to all. That's why meaningful connectivity and universal service is here today. So let's think of Maslow's pyramid. We will not enter into details about sex, love, and all these kind of things. Many got awake with these words. So we will get into a path towards impactful connectivity. Probably is something that was already discussed in the past within the SG12 group. But what we mean with that is once you got meaningful connectivity to an extent and you manage or at least aspire to closing the digital divide for all, you have to do it right. What do we mean with doing it right? Not creating another digital divide. This means that you need to ensure that the quality of experience that you ensure for those billions, 2.9 billions that are unconnected, they have the fair connectivity that they are entitled to. That would be the only way that we leave no one behind from a geographical perspective, from a socioeconomic perspective, and that we ensure that real services and real applications can be the trigger to new businesses and a digital transformation in our society, okay? So just starting very quickly and moving up the Maslow's pyramid, basic connectivity is just texting, SMS, basic voice, probably breaking voice in some places, but at least you can connect to someone. Functional connectivity is going one step forward. So you need some basic internet connectivity to transmit pictures, to send some WhatsApp, some more advanced applications, and access basic information online. Then you get to meaningful connectivity. That's where you get to richer content online. And then we come to the new topics that we want to bring to the table. Probably not something new, but at least we want to put it on the table for the future generations. Is first, we want to ensure online experiences are satisfying, are productive, are seamless, are so productive that it can bring value to the society. And therefore, this concept is pretty much aligned with our mission, quality of experience everywhere. We want to make, as a company, quality of experience available and affordable for all. That's the only way that you close the digital divide in a fair manner, okay? After this concept, the focus for today will be the evaluating connectivity status. There are like 4 pillars: universal access, affordability, usability. Some of the topics were already discussed today, but we will focus on the fourth bullet on the right side, the quality. What are the metrics, or what's the way and the KPIs that you need to measure to go one step beyond traditional quality of service parameters to get to quality of experience everywhere, okay? So why we are here is because we want to achieve meaningful connectivity first. Second, because we are all working as stakeholders in an industry that suffers information asymmetry. So there are license obligations, there are contractual agreements between operators and consumers, there are spectrum licenses, there are many other concepts that are subject to evaluation from regulators. That information asymmetry is what triggers independent measurements or measurements for governments and regulators. However, the methods and what we are doing here is also very useful, not only for regulators and governments, but also for ISPs. When we speak about connectivity or the status of connectivity, we can talk about different degrees of quality. It is no service, it is no coverage at all, or is it something else? Can I be in a remote area, have connectivity, some certain signal strength above, I don't know, 100 decibels, which is reasonable for many technologies, but still have customer complaints? Okay, yeah, that could be a trigger. Something's going on in there, but that's not enough. So we need to go one step beyond that. Well, we need to make sure that there is service availability in real applications, in real environments, and for all in all areas, okay? So probably there is much more on these topics and these discussions, and many other challenges to be coped with when measuring quality of connectivity. Now that we have covered the whys, so let's jump into the hows. We will focus today just in mobile connectivity. We also cover many fixed broadband measurements around the world. We will focus on some methods to measure mobile connectivity status. So many of our colleagues already discussed today about crowdsourcing methodologies. There are other alternatives that are also using internal information, as our colleague from Orange mentioned. It's about network hunters, network elements. There are also deep packet inspectors that are embedded into the network and also can provide very interesting information. But we will focus today on just 2 topics: crowdsourcing and a complementary method based on robots, active testing probes. Crowdsourcing has many flavors. It can be traditional crowdsourcing. It can be based on passive methodologies, on active, in the foreground, in the background. But we want to differentiate between 3 methodologies or 3 different approaches. So it's the traditional crowdsourcing embedded into third-party apps. I don't know, it could be media outlets, it can be weather apps, whatsoever. There is a second alternative where you get the same SDK, the same code, the same capabilities, and you embed this into particular apps. It could be a governmental app, or it can be an operator app, okay? So you have same capabilities or even more advanced capabilities because you have more control of those apps, but that's also an alternative of introducing a collaborative method in crowdsourcing. And the third one is obviously standalone apps. That's other way of collecting crowdsourcing information. All of them have their beauties. We will not get into the details about the pros and cons. Glad to discuss it later during the open bar. But what we wanted to mention today is that these approaches are valid for regulators and operators alike. They have different purposes, But from our perspective, usually crowdsourcing had certain limitations. Crowdsourcing cannot get everywhere, cannot measure everything. So that's why there is complementarity, and there are different flavors of crowdsourcing methods, and it can be even complemented with our next proposed methods. Robots are dedicated devices, a control testbed that just uses real equipment devices that are dedicated to intensive testing. It has advantages and disadvantages as the previous methods, but it provides you usually reliable and accurate information in a particular area where you have presence. It can be used for real-time monitoring. It can be used for testing, benchmarking, and other use cases, but it has a particularity. In this case, you ensure with this methodology that you can use it for punitive purposes. So if you use crowdsourcing, it might have certain limitations. For sure, it can be used for high-level benchmarking, for basic planning and optimizations from the operator side. It can be also used for end user empowerment. It can be used for persuasive processes where you create the incentives in the industry to improve the network performance. But there is at least a debate, and I agree that there is a discussion on this, that if you want to impose penalties, then eventually you need a more reliable and accurate data source, okay? That's why robots and active testing devices exist as well as a complementary method. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, okay? That's why there could be a mix of platforms to be used by a particular client, depending on the needs, depending on the use case. But we want to present to you and share two particular use cases. The first of all is based on our recently deployed project in Colombia. That's Italy. Italy photograph, not Colombia, so that's a mistake. I recognize the booth photo, but that's another discussion. No, I wanted to mention that what we did in Colombia is very unique. So what we did in there is to help the operators satisfy the regulatory requirements. It is something imposed by law, by the ministry and the regulator, to comply with a certain number of samples for a very granular geographical perspective, okay? And they even indicated what's the method to be deployed, and it is an SDK embedded into MNOs operators. So my Movistar, my Claro, and many other operators have already embedded this SDK. It has one particular beauty. The beauty is that it is deployed in a record time within 3 months in more than 4 million unique devices. It is collecting billions of samples of coverage, more than 15 million speed tests per month, and that's something really valuable for the industry in general. If we want to evaluate connectivity, of course, because it can get you a little bit farther than traditional crowdsourcing approaches. That's why we mentioned there are different flavors of crowdsourcing, okay? And this is a very unique one. For the time being, is one of the projects that is using this kind of approach. I believe that Peru is also trying to get something like this forward, and it's taking longer than expected. Apart from the beauty of getting very far in terms of rural areas, covering all municipalities in Colombia, you have the capability of delivering regulatory reports, but also reusing this information as an operator for internal purposes. So the operators eventually, apart from complying with regulation, what they are doing is to leverage this information for internal purposes, because you have very valuable insights about how the network performance is. So also regarding this approach, considering that it is using active testing in the foreground and also in the background with particular criteria for measuring the throughput, the latency, the jitter, and also the packet loss, it is very much aligned with ITU recommendations. The particularity is that there is a regulatory threshold that has to be met, not only in terms of samples per municipality, which is around 300, 400 per the most granular geographical or administrative division, according to the formulas that are defined in ITU recommendations. But it has also a requirement of getting higher than 5 megabits per second in downlink, higher than 2.6 megabits in uplink, less than 50 milliseconds in latency, and also, 100 milliseconds in latency, 50 in jitter, packet losses for informative purposes for the time being. So there is going to be a process following this reporting on where the regulator and the ministry is going to decide what to do with these particular conflict areas, what to do with that in terms of trying to incentivize new investments, more a persuasive approach in exchange for these deviations from what it was required. But basically, the most important thing is that the system is up and running, is unique in the world, and can get you very far. One of the limitations, and that's why we are going to present you a second use case, is that obviously with crowdsourcing, you can get very far. It's very scalable. It is eventually cheap as well to do it. You don't need hardware to do it, but it has limitations. You cannot ensure that you are getting to every single small village in the world, all the remote areas with localities less than 5,000 or even 500 inhabitants in the Amazon area in the south of Colombia, or even in the mountains in the north of Spain, which have also very small villages. So it is very well known that the rural areas of Spain have been emptied latest decades because of the people migrating to the urban areas, to the main cities. And what happened? That there is a lot of people left behind in those areas with underserved characteristics, because what triggers this project is consumer complaints. The first trigger for Colombia was a regulation. For this project is consumer complaints. What we did in Spain was basically go to those remote areas because there was no other way to go to get samples to analyze and evaluate the connectivity status or what was the level of the quality. And what we did is basically use active testing robots with dedicated vehicles to go through those villages and make sure that you had the proper visibility in terms of quality of service and network performance, basic stuff like throughput, latency, jitter, and packet loss, very well known for the audience, but also many more things on top of that, because the consumer complaints might come also from small villages where there was supposed to be coverage, according to the coverage maps, according to the coverage analysis from signal strength, but there were issues. So what's happening? So let's test also web browsing, let's test also gaming, let's test social messages, and let's try to understand what's going on. Let's make one step further in terms of quality of experience. So we went to all these remote areas in more than 400 municipalities. And what we managed is to understand where the problems were. Indeed, it might be surprising for you, but one indicator of no service of 40% might be alarming, right? So, but this is what we observe. When you evaluate no service from real applications and real service perspective, that's what you could get. If you just evaluate signal strength or coverage, you might eventually just see that is a 2, 5, 10% of lack of coverage. But when it comes to real experience, then it's when you uncover the truth. This is where we can unlock the quality of experience for the future generations. And last but not least, I don't want to be the one, I don't like it at all, the one between you and the open bar. So let's get to the takeaways. And first message, from our side, quality of experience is key. If we want to ensure that there is a fair digital transformation and no one is left behind, if we want to achieve long-term societal development. Second, traditional measurements methods are great, but sometimes are not enough. And they need to be complemented by other approaches so that you can get the KPIs, the in-depth analysis that you need to make sure that you understand and satisfy the consumer. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Sometimes, if you have the budget, a proper mix of those alternatives might be the ideal scenario. And last but not least, we want to encourage all the stakeholders here, most importantly, regulators and governments that are deciding the public policy of the future, to take into account these important reflections. Glad to discuss it further during the cocktail. Thank you very much. I hope that I kept you awake, at least half of you. So thank you very much for your attention. And let's go to the open bar if Fiona allows. Okay, thank you.